Welcome to the Map It Forward podcast, everyone, and welcome to you, Yanina Ferreyra.
How
Did
you
I say
doing?
it right?
Perfectly.
It's such a pleasure to have you on the show, my love. I've been looking forward to this for over a year. We've been saying we're going to do this for ages, and you being the busy woman that you are, it's just been lovely to witness all of the cool shit that you've been doing. So congratulations on everything you've achieved so far.
Thank you so much.
It's I was thinking this morning, where do I want to start the conversation with Yanina? And there's so many places we could start. You're the current Australian Brewers Cup champ.
Yeah,
You're an immigrant to a country that you didn't know the language of,
correct.
and you have worked your way up through a company to become one of the green buyers for the company.
Yes.
So clearly you're not a high achiever at all.
Nah, it's been complicated or complex, but yeah, it's nothing is
It's,
too impossible.
and I think that's where I kind of want to start the conversation is we find ourselves in very interesting, challenging times. And those who are meeting this moment with the skills that like the kind of character that they've already built up, they're finding that those skills are incredibly helpful. Are you finding that the fact that you've done hard things in the past are helping you meet this moment in ways that perhaps you weren't as prepared for if you have not gone through that hard stuff?
Definitely a little bit of the resilience that you build when things don't go your way for a long time. I think that that's helpful. I am still hopeful that even if your life hasn't been too difficult, I think that can be developed at any other time, right? So,
Yeah.
so that's my message of hope. Even if like people hasn't experienced crisis or economic instability, I think that there's still a time to build that. And the one thing, it sounds very silly, but the one thing that keeps me going a lot, especially during these times, because even if you experience hardship, nobody has experienced this, right?
No.
Like this is brand new, and it's global as well. So it's affecting everybody. So it doesn't feel like during the bushfire season in Australia, there was this thing about the rest of the world saying, "Oh, look how terrible this is," but they weren't going through the same thing.
Mm.
So you have that level of like feeling a little bit alone with that pain, with that trauma. When now it's like, look, we all dealing with it in
Can
so
you
many
hear that?
different. A little bit.
Yeah, that's the military helicopters.
Oh wow.
Yes. Go
Um,
ahead.
so we're all dealing with it right now, and it makes it like interesting. Like pretty much every single language in the world has words to express what is happening, which is quite amazing. And the one thing that keeps me, I guess, center is I love zombie movies. I
Do you
love.
really?
I'm obsessed with them, and in the zombie movies, the reason why I like them is not about the zombies. I like to see how the humans deal with it and how the people deal with the situation that is happening,
Uh-huh.
because it's a very extreme situation. And you always watch, and you watch one character or another one, and you have your opinions about them. Like you have characters you really like, and you have characters that are like, come on, you can't be that scared, you need to cross that area. It's very scary, but you have to do it. You can't stay there. um,
Oh,
and
that's wonderful.
I try to think all the time, like which character I want to be on the
Mm-hmm.
movie. And when this is happening, like I'm like, all right, do I want to be the one that is always complaining and like scared and has nothing positive to share, or do I want to be the one that like puts the suit on, goes to the supermarket, does the shopping for other people, like so yeah, every time I feel a little bit like scared or anything, I just try to bring myself into that.
Back to
into
zombie movies.
Exactly.
Just don't watch Contagion right now.
Oh, I watch it. I love Contagion.
It's a great
um,
movie.
it's a great movie. It's very realistic as well. Yeah.
Unfortunately, right now, for people who are terrified and don't understand like the importance behind that, and they just run at a million miles an hour beyond any of that, it can be a dangerous movie for people to watch who can't manage anxiety, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. It's but I also think if we try to look at the positive, there's a part of that movie that is very educational, and I find that myself here in Australia we don't have the lockdown laws yet.
I don't understand
So
why.
you can go outside if it's for exercising now. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot has changed since the last time we spoke. You can only go outside for exercising, or if you're going to your job and it's an essential job. But you can only go as two people.
Wow.
So that's great because they
Yeah.
really cut it down. Like before, you could still do boot camps, and now that all that is gone. Um, and it happens, like I might go for a walk with a friend like once a week, and there's little things that people is like, oh yeah, I wash my hands, but then they go and they touch a map, and they're like, oh, I think we need to go this way, and I'm like, what are you
And
doing?
then rub
Stop
their
touching the map.
face.
Yeah. So I think that if you look at the positive of that movie, like it could make people a little bit too paranoid, but at the same time I think there's a certain level of paranoia you do need to have, because it's not just about washing your hands.
No.
It's a little bit more complex than that, and I think if you take it as I'm taking it more like a video game, like a zombie movie,
Mm-hmm.
so it's a little game for me. So I come back from the supermarket and I clean up everything, and I have all these moments when I'm like, wait, I need to clean the wheel of the car,
Yep.
because I touch it with the hands that I use in the super. So I set up all these little rules for myself, but I'm trying to enjoy that, right? To go, okay, this is like this game where I need to pay attention, right? Like I can't like, I don't know, clean my hands with alcohol gel and then grab all my groceries again. That doesn't work.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, and this is a time to, in my opinion, this is a time to get educated on what is important and what doesn't matter. And I think it's why I'm so staunch on making sure that we send people to places that have the best information, like the WHO and the CDC, and informing people with data, and, helping people understand that, this is something you should be taking incredibly seriously. It's not a joke. It's not a hype. And I'm getting sent so many conspiracy theory things right now. It's like, well, why does it matter? Does it really fucking matter now? If this was a bioweapon or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's not the thing to be focused on right now. Right now, you just need to make sure you keep yourself healthy, and we can worry about the conspiracy theories later. Right now is all about like, don't cough in someone's face.
That seems like something that humans should know, right? It's amazing it took this long.
I think that's how I got it, when someone coughed, like probably this far, maybe like less than 30 centimeters away from my face.
Wow.
That's like a foot, I think, in American terms.
Wow.
And then he got kind of upset when I like shot him the stare of death. This was at the airport on the 9th of March. And about 4 days later, that's when I started to experience symptoms. And I'm like, I bet you was that guy that coughed in my face. But it's such is life. Like, I'm lucky I got a mild case of it. But it's one of those things that we should, after this, continue to understand that we've got to wash our hands, and we shouldn't sneeze in anyone's face, and we should cover our mouths whenever something like this happens.
Yeah, I don't think at this stage there's a way back to how everything was. I think that a huge amount of people would be... I keep thinking about like the first music festival after this, right? I think it's just going to be so awkward. Like, so many people suddenly like not really getting that they can be together again. It'd be very interesting.
I wonder how like business meetings are going to go. I don't know that I'll ever walk up to somebody at a first time meeting and shake their hand again.
Yeah, it made me think a lot about, because we do a lot of kissing in South America,
Yeah, same in
and it
Syria.
made me and it made me think about like the amount of times you arrive to a house party or something, there's 20, 30, 50 people, and you like
Kiss
give a
everyone.
kiss to
Hello.
everybody, but like your cheek is now so contaminated, so like even them kissing you, it's terrible, right? It's not just for you, but you're being carrying everything. Yeah.
Yes. And this is an interest, like I will also want to talk about origin, and this is a good segue into that, because cultural differences are very much something that we as an industry need to be hyper aware of, because even though we serve coffee in our local communities, when people go and buy from origin or visit different countries and experience the coffee culture, etc., there's different customs that come with all of that kind of stuff. And being aware of that is very interesting. When you go to origin countries, do you think this will change the way that you engage with people at origin?
I thought that, of course, I went to Ethiopia in February,
Uh-huh.
like end of February, and coronavirus was already a thing then, but it was only happening in China, and it was kind of like spreading out.
Right.
I remember, because I was a little bit doubtful if I should still go to Ethiopia, and then the day that my flight left from Australia was the day the World Health Organization declared an emergency.
Uh-huh.
That's
I bet you
great.
that put you at ease, right?
Yeah. But because nothing was happening officially saying you shouldn't travel, I
Right.
had to go. And I was very scared on the plane, and I was very scared on the airport. I did have a mask, because we had heaps of masks from the bushfire season,
Right.
so every Australian was kind of already stocked up. And and then when I arrived to Ethiopia, they have this beautiful way of saying hello, like you shake their hand and then you do shoulder with shoulder, like it's beautiful,
Oh, how lovely.
like a half hug. It's beautiful. Um, and as soon as I saw them, like they gave me their hand, and I just went for it.
Yeah.
And it was this huge feeling of like, it's fine, it's fine, it's here, it's fine. I don't know how to say it. It's similar to, when you see a family member and you're like, and you give them a hug or a
Yep.
kiss, like it doesn't feel like, oh, here is a problem. I don't know.
I know, I
Oh,
get it.
of course, now it's a complete different thing.
Right.
Like I don't hug and kiss my sister anymore. We live in different houses, so if we see each other, like for a thing of like protecting her as well, I don't do it. But in that time, it wasn't the situation that is right now,
Mm.
and yeah, it just felt very like, it's okay. Yeah.
The day before I was supposed to go to New York, where I think that I was in the airport and I got it. I had a meeting in Orange County, which is like an hour and a half from here. I had a meeting there with a group of Aussies for work. I was doing a consultation, and I remember we were all walking up to each other to say hi, and I'm like, do we hug? Do we, like, are we gonna, because it's Aussie, I haven't seen Aussies in ages, right? So it's like, oh, hi. Oh, okay, screw it. We'll hug and say hi. And here nobody kisses hello, but in Australia everybody kisses hello, right? So it was
A
just
little bit. Yeah.
it was just very weird knowing what to do. Now if someone walks up towards you here, you kind of look at them and go, what is going on here? Why? It almost feels offensive.
Yeah.
And then you look in the parks and there's still people getting together.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? And that's why I said, like, that movie is not too bad after all, because sitting in the park, like sitting on a bench,
Yeah.
touching things is the problem, and that's the bit that people really need to understand, that it's not just so much about touching other people as it is also to touch objects that other people touch.
And the hard part about that is they don't quite yet understand the actual way that the relationship between the virus ending up on a surface and how much that form of you contracting the virus is implicated in you getting it. And that was a terrible way to say that, but what I mean is it's a respiratory disease. So you've got to breathe the virus in, and it needs to get into your throat and grow in your throat and then end up in your lungs for you to have the virus, right? If you were to like touch something on a surface and then put your hands in your mouth, they don't know what the rate is that actually infects you, because if you put the virus in your mouth and you manage to swallow it and put it in your gut, your stomach acids will kill it. But if you don't, and it makes its way in your mouth and grows and then it infects your throat and then you breathe it in, well, then that could become a problem. And there's a lot of misinformation around that kind of thing, because people are going out there and saying, support your local business, go to your local cafe. You can't catch coronavirus from eating a croissant that someone who made it and had COVID-19, if they sneezed on it, you can't catch coronavirus that way if you eat the croissant. Well, that's not entirely true. And they don't quite know what the relationship is. Like, you hear of this woman in Australia that was going around and licking fruit. She had COVID-19 and she was licking fruit in the vegetable section, and they arrested her. They still don't understand whether her actions could potentially infect people or not. Nobody knows. She was licking apples and shit. Like, so it's just one of those things that you just be careful. You don't just wash your hands, wipe down every surface, wash all your fruits and vegetables, cook all your fruits and vegetables if you can, and don't take any chances. They're finding in Europe, not in Europe, here, that there is a high proportion of cases, and I say this to everyone who's like, this disease just affects old people. They're finding that the incidences of the cases in New York, a high proportion of them are of people who are under 44 years old, 30%, which is much higher than in other countries. So it's going to be really interesting. How do you think, and this is like a question that I don't think any of us can answer, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. How do you think this is going to affect the origin countries the most?
The answer to that, I think, with the picture today, right? Every day the picture changes, and with the picture today, it's gonna affect them mostly economically, I think. Especially with the drop in demand of specialty coffee, the drop in demand of coffee in general. I think that's gonna be the biggest impact. I am yet to see like the health side of it. I'm not sure yet. The cases there are cases in the origin countries already, and their health system is usually not great.
And they're quite community-based systems, right? So they're all together a lot.
Yeah, but also you have, and this is the part we don't know, right? You also have people with a complete different immune system than ours.
Right.
And that variable on the equation, we don't know how it's going to play. Because we go to those countries and we catch things all the time. Yeah. And they're there and they're fine. So yeah, it's a little bit also related. I think your immune system is heavily related to your gut biome. And the Western countries are not very good at that stuff. Like, we put fried chicken and things that we shouldn't on our bellies. Yeah. And there's a different level of nutrition over there. Definitely, I understand that, like, they're not, they might not have the access to some of the luxury products that we have. But at the same time, because they're a much more sharing community, like from very early on, their immune systems build up in a different way. So from the health point of view, I don't know if we're going to see the same terrible things we've seen in Europe. I wouldn't be able to answer that. But today, definitely, I know that it's going to affect the demand of the coffees, because this happened at a terrible time. This happened right when harvest was finishing in a lot of producing countries.
Yeah.
So all the producers are still, some of them, preparing their coffees and not very aware, because this is the busiest time for them. It's like the Christmas, the Christmas period. It's absolutely a very busy time. So not all of them might be also switched on with the news and what is happening, because for them it's like, yeah, I understand something is going on, but I need to finish prepare these lots, and maybe not fully connecting that a lot of those lots might not find
Homes.
a market.
So it sounds like there's a couple of different issues there. There's the economic impact, and then there's the health impact.
Mm-hmm.
And let's look at the health impact for a second. I wonder if the big challenge, like what they're finding in different countries, is that the death rate is going to be directly correlated to the quality of the healthcare system. And the reason that they're saying that is because once people get the virus and get it severely, the only way that they can keep them alive is with respirators.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can, I guess what one would naturally surmise is that if we can keep the virus out of origin producing countries, or just mild cases in origin producing countries, because of the poor quality of healthcare and the technology that's required to keep people alive, it should be pretty okay. But if it ravages those areas, these are very expensive machines.
Yep.
And all the countries in the world are trying to get access to them, and which is driving the prices up right now. So not only are they expensive right now, but they're in very limited supply, so that even if in Ethiopia they could get access to them or could afford them, it's difficult to get access to them, right? So that's one side of it. We're talking about countries that are typically don't have the quality of healthcare that, let's say, in Australia or in America that we're typically used to, more so in Australia. And then we look at it on the other side of things from an economic perspective. Something I wanted to ask you about there is, we're coming into the 5th year of the supply being greater than the demand for coffee, which is has played an extraordinary role in what's happening with the coffee price crisis, etc., etc. Now, if we look at what's happening now, the part that I don't understand is supply is going to far, far outstrip demand, more so than in the years that came before it this coming year.
Yeah.
And yet you look at the C price, and it hasn't gone close to the devastating prices it was this time last year. What do we anticipate that is going to continue to play out in a way that we don't quite know, or is what's going to happen, quite predictable in this moment, do you think?
In terms of the C pricing, or in terms of
the C price, do you think that this is just going to cause the C price to topple when people realize, like, right now they're not really paying attention?
Yeah.
Right now, what they're worrying about is we've got to get our money out, because as speculators who play a massive role in pushing the C price in one way or one direction or the other, they're just pulling their money out. There's not as much liquidity in that market as there usually is, and we don't quite know what's going to happen in this particular moment. But for people like you who are quite this is your game, this is what you do, your day in, day out. Has there been anything that's come before this that gives us an indication of what the C market will do once people do start paying attention?
It's funny because it is definitely my field. However, we don't price with the C market, right? So I'm lucky in that way that we hear what the implications of going up and down that have on producers. If the price goes up, usually they always tell you their workers start demanding for more money, even if they're not fully aware of how it relates to them. But usually they hear it and they're like, hey, you should pay me more. When it goes down.
You mean pickers and the employees on the farm, not the farms themselves? Yep.
Yeah. So, but because we work with direct trade and we work with a complete different set of pricing structure that doesn't depend on the C market, then the C market is something we kind of like have a look at, but it doesn't necessarily impact us directly. Um, my understanding as well, and look, might be a complete uh, disaster on this, but my understanding is that the C price is not also fully related to demand and supply.
Okay.
There's a lot of different treaties and agreements around the world that also help compensate that. For example, if Brazil decides to burn half of their production just to move the price, it's not that simple.
No, that's
Uh,
right.
they
Yep.
don't have the control over the price. The price is controlled by the stock market, and there's a lot
The
of different tricks
exchange.
and
It's controlled by the exchange, right? So people will react to the kind of news. So if speculators, they're people who,
definitely,
right?
which
So
is something that is not even tangible, right? It has nothing to
yeah,
do with producers. It's just a video game. Um,
I like you that
so
analogy. It is. It's just a video game.
yeah, and it's amazing. Like we always said this. Like it's so unfair that the price changes when it has nothing to do with them. It's nothing they did. It's nothing they were even part of, right? Like it's a complete different abstract construction happening somewhere else. Um, so that's why I don't think that this would definitely like. I think it would play out depending on how that game plays out.
Right.
And you also have the big players that are the ones that buy most of the commercial coffee, and I don't think their lobby is going to be too soft to let that happen just because.
What do you mean by their lobbying not being too soft? You don't think that they are going to fight? Let me say it a different way. Do you think that because it would serve them for the C price to go down, they're going to let it happen?
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Like we keep the prices that we have with the producers we work with. That doesn't change for us. It doesn't change on the C price. Every now and then we do have a conversation where the producer might go, look, this is happening, this is why my costs are going up, or these kind of products. A lot of the time the products they use on the farms, they depend on the C price. So that's when we need to renegotiate some prices. But yeah, we hope that this doesn't affect us too much.
So you work for Project Origin, and you have a very somewhat unique buying model. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the way Project Origin buys coffee aside from the way that most people do it?
Yeah, so the way we buy coffee, of course, is a very fluid way, and it changes year after year the more we grow. When I joined Project Origin, we were importing coffees from, I think, 10 different countries or 9 different countries. At the moment, we are on 14.
Yeah, wow.
And it's something that grows very rapidly, and and you have to adapt. Different countries have different, I guess, policies and economic situations that you need to adapt to. So it's constantly changing. We don't have one pricing model that fits all. We work with each country individually, and we work inside each country with each producer individually. So you have two main factors that producers would need. One is to move volume, and the other one is to increase the price for a premium product that they don't have much of. So that's
Right.
roughly the two broad problems to resolve, right? So some producers would go, look, I don't mind too much about fighting the price as I mind fighting the volume. I
Right.
need you to, or I need you to help me move this much because this is how much I produce. Which in other cases is the other way around. So in the way we work, we have about 70% of the coffees we import are from established relationships, from people we buy year after year. The the decision making on how we work with those people usually has a lot to do with sharing the same values.
Love
Um,
that.
some
Love
kind of,
that.
of course, beautiful quality coming out of like a specific farm, but Yeah, it has a lot to do with sharing the same mentality, the same view of coffee. And then we understand very well that they might have different motivations behind it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not every producer wants to produce 90 points cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Some producers might tell you, look, I'll do what you tell me to do, but my goal is to send my kids to school or to be able to rebuild my house. So that's the kind of things we negotiate when we talk about win-wins with producers. For us, the model is that they walk away happy and
Mm-hmm.
we walk away happy.
Love that.
And if there's any kind of issue in that process, then we need to look into deeper to see how we can make sure that both parties are happy with the deal that is being made. And that comes to, for example, exclusivity. Sometimes we work with producers in an exclusive way, and we have a pricing model with them when we go, all right, we're going to buy entire harvest. If the quality is this much, this is the price we consider fair. If the quality increases or you have a few micro lots that are higher quality,
Mm-hmm.
we can look at these prices. If coffees are 90 plus, let's discuss, right? Like let's allow you to also put your price. And sometimes that, when that happens, we go, you know what, we work with you, we help produce these lots, but we also think that these lots are very, very good. We think you should enter this into competition.
Yeah. Wow.
uh, so sometimes we give the producer like, all right, cool, this portion enter into cup of excellence, or enter into our, in the case of Honduras, into our late harvest auction, because we really think that you have a high chance to do a lot better than the price that maybe we agree on, or like you have a chance, to be on the top five, just because these coffees are that good. And it is a gamble. The auctions are always a gamble.
Mm-hmm.
You get lucky or not, and we always explain to producers that this is not a forever sustainable model. Like, you shouldn't always just enter your coffees into auction, because the year that you don't qualify, or the year that they knock you out,
Yeah.
um, and then they offer you a much lower price, you're not going to be happy.
Well, because it's subjective, right?
Correct. So the sustainable model for us is, let's work year after year, let's improve year after year, and let's grab a portion of that, enter into the auction, and let's apply for a multiplier, right? Like for a
Yeah.
much bigger multiplier. So I'm talking about producers that, they have entered lots there, and they have got 15, 20, $25 per pound on
Wow.
those lots. And they would tell you, later on, they're like, oh, I should have entered it all. And I'm like, I understand, but like, you can also get a higher price if your lot is not huge, right?
Yeah.
If your lot is huge, it's very hard for the buyer to keep bidding on it. I think last year we split some of those lots as well, to give them the opportunity to keep going higher. We split number one and number two into two lots. But yeah, for them it's like, and it's a little bit of this, like, going together with them into making business decisions for themselves. Um, we know that their needs are completely different, their contexts are completely different, so we're not there to give them, I guess, a guideline of what they should do, because
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, the decision should be theirs. But we provide a little bit of a coaching and suggestions on what we think it could work, and then we let them do whatever they want, of course. So it's interesting. It's very empowering. I find it, to work with
I
that model.
I was just gonna say, you glow when you talk about this.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see that that's really obvious. You're incredibly passionate about your job, but not just that. You seem to love what it gives you and how it feeds you as much as how it feeds other people.
And inside that realm, there's so many little things, right? Like, for example, sometimes we might work with a producer and you notice that they need more infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes offering that infrastructure or offering to pay for it, that producer doesn't want it, because they feel like, no, why should I get handovers?
Yeah.
So there's situations where you have to negotiate even that, and be like, all right, cool. Well, what about, like, we lend you the money and then we build this thing, but then you pay us back, no problem. We don't request that payment back, but sometimes it's so
It's
simple as,
dignity.
like, it's a couple of, like, drying beds, or having more areas to ferment the coffee, or put tiles on the fermentation pools. There's so many little things that for us, you look at it and you're like, it's 500, 1,000, 2,000, $10,000, but it's an investment that you see that it's gonna pay off.
Wow.
And maybe they just don't have the cash, so you have to work with them in that regards. But then also, this is something we very self-critical as a team, and we always talking about this. Every now and then you're gonna have a producer that would, I don't know, get a bonus this year and go and take their family for dinner for a whole month.
Nice.
And we always said, like, who are we to judge that?
Yeah.
Nobody tells me how to spend my salary. Nobody comes to me and tells
Mm-hmm.
me, oh, well, are you spending it wisely? Like, that's not
It's not their
for
business.
no. So it's not our business neither. And as much as sometimes we would think, oh, maybe I wouldn't have done that investment, you also need to think that you're not on their context. An example with that, and it wasn't even like spending it badly, but one of the producers we work with, every bonus he kept making every year, he buy more farms.
Yeah, good on
And
him.
we went from, like, a producer that had like about 5 to 6 hectares to having like 5 and 6 farms of
Oh,
that size.
wow.
And he's planting and planting, and every time we visit, he's like, oh, like, maybe in a few years, 4 or 5 years, I'll be producing a lot more. Like, do you guys have the volume to help me grow? And even chatting with some of the exporters that also work with him, the exporters were telling us, you guys need to tell him to stop buying farms. He's buying a lot of farms. But we get it, right? Like, in his context, like, having the land is a huge multiplier, is a huge asset,
Absolutely.
because the day that one of them doesn't work, doesn't matter, the other one is going to work. But we did have to have a chat, and we said, like, oh, like, let's start, like, focusing again on, like,
Quality.
quality, because, like, you're producing now like 60, 70 bags of like 86 point coffee, which is great, but it's very hard to sell
Yep.
a micro lot of that size. We need to go back to, like, producing less but stronger, maybe 88 points,
Mm-hmm.
87 points, or 89. But let's focus, a little bit. Let's narrow our focus, and yeah, let's make the multipliers work in different micro lots instead of like one gigantic lot that it's consistent, but it's hard to find a market for.
Yeah.
So that's when you start, like, going back and forth with the negotiation and with the strategy with them, because it's always a long-term strategy.
Mm.
But when you see it from their eyes, man, I'll be buying farms as well. Of course. Why wouldn't you?
You know what's really lovely? It's really lovely to hear you talk knowing that the person who's like the founder of your company is Sasha Sestic. And you can hear Sasha's values in you. Like
Nice.
I can inherently see that you come with these same values, but I have an enormous amount of respect for Sasha, purely because I can see the intention behind what he's doing, and it is so lovely to see that same intention in the people that are helping him build Project Origin and Honor. Like it's I talk a lot on the Daily Coffee Pro about the idea of putting effort into building culture, and an intentional culture, and helping the people that work for you understand what the value of the company is and what your own values are and what you want them to cultivate. And it's so obvious speaking to you. You're like one of Sasha's professional children. You know what
It's
I mean?
very fun. It's very funny. We had this conversation once. I'm gonna share something that was a bit private conversation, but I think it's gonna be fine. Um, the companies that Sasha runs have a lot of people that compete as well.
Yes.
And they don't only compete, but they do quite well.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that is there's a misconception around that. I talk a lot about, especially in Australia, when people say to me, oh, but you guys have amazing coffees, you're so lucky, you have access to all these amazing coffees. And I'm like, we don't have access to all the coffees. We have access to the coffees that Project Origin works
Right.
with. That's it, right? Like, I don't have the phone number of a lot of amazing producers, that are out there that win competitions. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if if we put the coffees in the wrong fermentation tank, like we done, you know.
That's
So
exactly right.
it's not that simple. Like we actually depend on our own capability to produce these coffees as well. However, every year the amount of competitors in the company increases. This last year, for example, for regionals, I competed in Brewers Cup with my colleague Cielo, and in Project Origin at that time we were only 6 employees.
Yeah,
And I
wow.
said to Habib, the general manager of Project Origin, I said, man, do you know what it means that we are a company of 6 and 2 people are competing? Like that's a third of the company.
Yeah.
And there are 2 women as well, which is not common. Not many girls out there have a female colleague that is competing from the same company, right? I made friends with a lot of female baristas out there that we were competitors, but it was always from different companies. I never had the pleasure and the luxury to share that journey with a female colleague. I had shared that journey with a lot of like male colleagues, of course. So like this is amazing, and we are in the process of building a warehouse, and you know, Habib said like, oh, what do we need for the warehouse? I was like, well, we need a WBC room and a WBRC room. It's like, for what? What do you mean for what? I'm like, if today is 2 of us competing, what do you think is going to happen when the company is 15 people?
Yeah.
You know, you're going to have 7 competitors.
Or 30 people.
You know, his face was like, of course he hasn't thought about it. He's like, oh no, because of course comp time is always stressful time, and you know, like people is very like focused, and it's not easy to have people competing. But yeah, I think and Sasha said the same thing to me. He's like, I don't know what to do, but every time I turn around, it's more of you. You know, every time I turn around,
he's having professional babies.
He's like, I'm not even coaching you guys. Like, I'm not even like, because that's the other misconception. A lot of people say to me, oh, but you guys have Sasha. It must be so amazing. Like, you know, he's walking around and like providing feedback to everybody.
Sasha's busy running businesses.
And don't get me wrong, he's very generous with his time, and he's always very nice with us. But the truth is, when you have like 12, 13 people competing on the same company, you might not have the time to give to everybody. And it keeps like propagating, you know. It's like it's so much propagation of that. And I say to Sash, you know why this happens? This happens because you're allowing them to be who they want to be.
Yeah.
Like
so
that's
important.
I heard in a few other companies that there's a lot of guidelines. There's a lot of like, oh, well, you can't say this, or you must mention the company, or you must mention the brand. And Sasha's company never had that, you know. Sasha would never tell you, no, you need to speak like this, or you need to say this, or you need to sound like this. We have had, of course, you guys don't get to see it because it's only the regional competitions. We have competitors talking about their moms and talking about their gardens and talking about like growing up in different cultural backgrounds. So it's not like all the routines, you know, would sound the same or be the same. Like everyone gets to truly express themselves. And I say to Sash, when you are allowing people to be who they want to be, you only going to have more and more competitors, because that's where you're feeding the new ones as well. They're seeing it and they're like, oh, wow, look at these people. They're competing. They're doing well. They're being who they want to be. Because if you look at like our routines, we all have different strengths and different weaknesses, and we all help each other with that. But we don't, you know, go and all replicate the same formula. Quite the opposite. Like everybody's always trying to find their individual value and what they can bring to the table. So I think that's something that it definitely helped the culture of the company, and it created this, right? It created a lot of professionals that were able to focus on their areas of interest and are able to flourish and do very well in their own areas because they're allowed to. I think that's the biggest thing. It's the freedom to be who you want to be. It creates this generation of coffee professionals that share your values but might have different views about, you know, how coffee is. So yeah, I think that creates a very healthy, diverse environment.
And there's a misconception that when people disagree, it's not healthy. You know, it's so healthy for people to disagree with each other as long as they have the capacity to to joust it out in a respectful way, right?
I have this concept for competition, but it can be applied to business as well. When I coach competitors or when I help competitors, especially new ones, I'm like, all right, do you have anyone at your workplace that you get a little bit nervous around, or maybe you don't have a perfect relationship, or they're not your mates? And they're like, they always say yes. And I'm like, all right, cool. That's the people you should do your run throughs to. I call
Yeah.
that the panel of death. Like you
Yeah.
choose your 4 or your 3 judges that are not your closer mates, because your closer mates are always going to tell you, oh, you're amazing, I really like it. Usually my presentations are a little bit emotional, or like they're very focused on the story, or on the how that whole thing came to be, and I'm usually less technical and less, so my panel, it's usually a very technical panel. I choose the baristas that are never too focused on that side of the story, the ones that can see through that and be like, oh yeah, too much fluff, but where is the information? And they are the ones that help me grow, right?
But
and
it's
I think that's
all
a
of that
misconception
stuff, right?
as well.
Go ahead, sorry.
I think that's a bit of a misconception a lot of people have, that we are training and coaching each other and giving high fives to each other and pats on the back, where it's actually a lot harsher than that, but in a good way. Like, it helps you grow and it helps you get better.
100%. I feel like the journey to success in competition isn't just about the presentation. It's about those little decisions of, so who am I going to have on my practice panel? When am I going to do that? How am I going to prepare? You were telling us in an Instagram live that you had used Wim Hof's method of breathing as a way to prepare you for a mindfulness practice that got you to experience Boston in a way that was enhancing rather than debilitating, right?
Yeah.
All of those are the different things, and it's all about the right choices that lead up to that get you particular places. It's not just the presentation or the story or the coffee or any of that.
I always said, like, there's this conception that, we're training in these pristine environments with all the machines and and a lot of people said, oh, but you guys have a WBC room, that's so lucky. And I'm like, yeah, we have a WBC room, but we are like 13 people.
You don't have hundreds of people around.
You have to pack your things, you have to put them aside, you have to let somebody else come, you only have 2 hours or 3 hours. It's very strict, and I use this like silly comparison, but I don't know if anyone has watched the movie I, Tonya.
That's intense, that movie.
Our training is a little bit more like that, like it's chopping wood, like outside, and like that kind of training. Like, it's not like, oh, the perfect gym and the perfect equipment all the time, and you having your times to prepare mentally. It's more like a little bit, let's make it work with what you have, and I think that's awesome. I think that builds a lot of resilience and makes the team stronger as well.
And character. I think it goes a long way to that, because you hear people talk a lot about how in order to get to WBC or the Brewers Cup version, I always trip on that acronym.
Oh, WBRC. I had to get used to. Yeah,
I always trip on it. My brain doesn't like the R, and it just keeps saying WBC, WBC. And living in America, learning how to say R is intense, because I say 4 now instead of 4. Anyway, so people talk about how in order to get there, the level of privilege that's required, an average barista can't get there because the investment of money that's required, a lot of small businesses can't afford that investment. What do you say to that?
Oh, well, look, I know it's not a huge story out there yet. There's actually a movie being done about Agnieszka from Poland, which will be released this year. But to me, that whole Agnieszka moment was the way to prove that you can do it without all the fluff. That story happened when we were in Ethiopia with Sasha last year. I remember we had a very, very nice conversation when he said, you know what, like, I have everything I ever wanted. I'm done. Like, I built what I wanted. I think this is a time we start giving back.
Wow.
Everything we do needs to be to
That
give
gave me
back.
chills.
This was a private conversation in Ethiopia, and I said, and he said, I think it's the time we start sponsoring competitors. And I was like, oh, that sounds amazing.
Mm.
So I started giving him some guidelines for it, because I'm very like political as well, and I was like, we need to make sure this is seen as the genuine idea it is, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we can be related business wise, we need to. So I started thinking all these things. We should prioritize independent competitors, like, and one thing I suggested was like we should sponsor one man and one woman.
Mm-hmm.
uh, at the beginning, Sash was like, oh, but wouldn't that be unfair, like, or like kind of like sexist to go, oh well, we're gonna shouldn't we sponsor the best ones, and then if the best candidates are from one gender or another. And I said, look, yeah, but at the same time, the world is very unfair. So if someone accuses us to be unfair, we'll go, yeah, we are being unfair because the world is unfair. We're gonna choose one boy, one girl. Doesn't like
Fair
the
enough.
moment the world is fair, we're gonna choose the best ones. But this is how we're gonna do it for now.
Yeah, but fair is one of those things that there's always someone trying to find a way that equality is unequal and inequality is not unequal enough. Like, if you try and be balanced, there's still other groups that you're not including.
Yeah,
And I think trying to do a little bit better than your best today is always what you should be aiming for.
yeah,
Because a couple years ago, there wouldn't have even have been the conversation of, well, let's try and make it a little gender balanced. Like,
yeah.
that wouldn't have even been a thing. This conversation right now is better than it has been, and perhaps
Look,
we can do better later.
I'm totally aware that the conversation would keep evolving, and the conversation would continue to involve other kind of minorities, right?
Right.
Like, women are not a minority, but definitely they were in a position of, or what I believe was a position of disadvantage at that time, and we were like 19 years without having a single female champion.
Yeah.
And in my head, I was, what if
Right.
this was the piece on the chessboard that needed to be moved.
Right.
And what if it's just because they haven't had the same level of support? Maybe. So he agreed to it. He's like, all right, cool. Let's do one man, one woman.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right. Well, I have the woman. I have this girl in Poland. We didn't know each other personally. It was very. We only knew each other through WhatsApp. And she bought some coffees to compete in Brewers Cup in Poland in the past from us.
Yeah.
And that's how we knew each other. And then she told me, oh, I won barista, I'm gonna go to Worlds. And I was like, oh. And she's like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And at that time I was like, give me 1 week. Do not. And I couldn't even verbalize. I couldn't
You
say
must have
anything
been so
because I couldn't even
excited.
promise. So I was like, just don't
Don't do
don't buy
anything.
anything, don't do anything, don't talk to anybody about this. Just give me 1 week. And she's like, why? And I'm like, just
Don't
give me
worry.
1 week.
Trust me, bro.
And then I started the campaign to like formalize that sponsorship and what would it mean, and then she ended up coming to Australia to train here, and I remember, I think this is the point of my story, because I think it was a very important moment where she came into my house. I'm telling this is a brand new story. Not many people know this story. But she came into my house because so she could save on accommodation. So she stayed here. And one night I said to her, oh, do you want to, like, we open a bottle of wine and just chat about whatever, or do you want to talk about comp? Because she was training, more than 12 hours a day. She's like, no, let's talk about comp, because that's the kind of girl she is. And I was like, all right, well, what's your goal for Amsterdam? She said, oh, well, I would like to make semifinals. Like, I think is something that is never been done for Poland, and it'll be very nice. I've been to Worlds twice and, finished number 35. So I would like to be on top 16 at least. And I was like, if we're going to help you, you need to promise you're going to win it. And she said, nah, I can't win it. And I said, if you can't win it, you can go and find a hotel room and stay somewhere else then. If you want to stay in my house, you need to promise me you're going to win it. She looked at me and she's like, Shanina, I can't win it. Like, I can't. I don't work for anybody famous. I'm a home trainer. I'm an independent competitor. I haven't done my own processing. I haven't done studies with universities. I have nothing to show for, she said. All I have to show for is customer service. And I was like, well, do that then. Just do that. Just be the best version of yourself you could possibly be,
Yeah,
to the
wow.
point that nobody can copy that. But you have to promise me that you're going to aim for it. I'm not saying go and win it. I'm saying promise me you're going to try to win. That's it. And it was amazing. At that time, we actually caught up not long ago about that for the first time ever. And she told me she thought I was insane. And she just agreed with me, so I would shut up. So, okay, fine. Yeah, I'll win WBC. And yeah, we made this cute deal with each other that, we wouldn't talk about as if it was a possibility. We would talk about it as if it already happened.
A
And
certainty.
and when she went to Amsterdam, it was amazing because we had the live scoring, right? And
Yep.
she passed the semifinals like number 2 in the world. And I messaged her and I was like, hey, what did we talk about? Like, it wasn't even a congratulations or number 2, it was kind of like a, come on, you said number 1. What is this
Yeah.
number 2?
Wow.
And then she made semifinals, and then we talked, and like on WhatsApp, and she said, and I said, how you doing? She's like, oh, I'm very well. I think everything went well today. And I was, all right, can you please promise me you're gonna pretend to be surprised when they call you for finals? And she answered, okay. Of course, she couldn't answer, right? Like she
Yeah.
knew she wasn't allowed to say, oh, come on, like if that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I think
You'd
I also
already
did.
threatened her enough by that point.
I think I also wasn't convinced enough, but there was this thing about like, we cannot let this one go now.
Yeah.
And then I remember watching the announcements, and when they announced her to the finals, I remember having this gigantic fear of like, what have we done?
Wow.
Like, this is what? Like, when you think you're going to do something, but
And it
maybe you
actually
didn't think
happens?
it happened. But it was this huge fear of like, oh no, like what have we done? And she was the only woman in finals, and I was like, and then I the part of the ONA team was with her in Amsterdam. A very good friend, Angus Mackey, was there with them,
Uh-huh.
and he messaged me the morning of finals, and he said, please, look, don't say anything, but be ready to have your first female champion.
Wow. Oh, dude, I just got chills.
I think he said her coffee is amazing. It's better than the other 2 days before. She's so calm. She's like, she went to McDonald's last night.
What?
She told me all this, like she was so relaxed and so happy. And I talked to her and I was like, how you doing? She's like, I'm great. I was like, how's coffee? It's doing great. And I was like, all right, cool. Like, don't take your eyes off the goal and just go for it. And I say to her, enjoy making coffee for the last time in your life on stage. And then like, she won, and it was kind of like very weird. It was very, very weird.
You
It
need
was
to be
very
everybody's coach. You need to be Trump's coach right now.
It was very strange, and I remember like someone sent me some questions because we had to do some interviews, and someone sent me this question of like, oh, how does it feel to source the coffee of the first female champion in history? And I think that was the time that I just cry and cry.
Yeah,
That was the
wow.
moment where it became real, and it was very, very emotional. And I remember I sent her a meme after she won. Oh, this is a terrible story, but like I sent her a meme right after she won of these 3 water wells that say well, well, well.
I like you so much.
And she was like, hey. So we called each other. This was like, I think announcements in Amsterdam was something like 5 or 6 p.m. And I called her like an hour or 2 after.
Yeah.
and she was in her hotel room. I was like, oh, it sounds very quiet in there. Where are you? And she's like, I'm in the hotel. The trophy is in the table, and I can't believe it.
Wow.
And it was this like moment of like, yeah, what has happened? Um, so yeah, that's my message to the people that think that it's not possible, or the people that think that you need $200,000 to win worlds. I don't think so. I think it helps definitely, but I
What?
don't
How
think
does
that.
it help? Help me understand, because I've not competed. My eye has been on business and building business and all of that over the last 15 years. So help me understand, like, where does all the money go? When people are talking about $100,000 and $200,000 to get to Worlds, is it in flights and accommodation? Is it in the coffees? What is? Where
Well,
does it
look,
go?
in the case of AGA, like there's definitely not even close to be that number. No way.
Yep.
But one of the things you calculate, of course, is the coffee. If you're
Mm-hmm.
buying coffees that are like $300, $400 a pound, then it adds up very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Aga's coffee at that time was $30 per kilo, her espresso. So it was
Mm-hmm.
nothing crazy. We actually had a 2-minute conversation after she won because we had 90 boxes of it. And he was like, what do we do now? And we were like, let's leave it. Let's leave it at the same price. Let everybody have it,
Yeah.
So, yeah, when they say, oh, well, you need an expensive coffee, I'd say not necessarily. Some expensive coffees are amazing, and that's awesome. But I don't think necessarily the coffee needs to be this crazy, $10,000 per kilo kind of thing. No way. The other thing is, of course, your wages. So a lot of competitors need to stop working to
Mm-hmm.
train. So that usually is considered into that big number that people give. Every time I train for comp, usually we train after work hours.
Mm-hmm.
It was a surprise to me when I won nationals and I had to train for Boston that the company was like, all right, cool, now you stop working.
Oh, wow.
Maybe it's because, like, of course, I've never won nationals, so I didn't know exactly how it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, when you have the ability to train 8 hours a day and that's all you're focusing on, it definitely gives you a different edge. So it gives you a higher chances, not like you would win definitely, but it will give you higher chances if you're able to practice. The same as an athlete going to the Olympics,
Which is
when
where
you're
Sasha's background like really does come in to help, doesn't it? Like him being an Olympiad, he understands an Olympian. He understands the commitment that's required to compete at that level.
Yes, and I also have seen Sasha train. I am lucky enough that at that time I was with the company before he won WBC, and I offered to wash his stuff. So I would come sometimes when he was training and just rinse everything off and help set up again. And I wouldn't say a thing because I didn't know anything. All I would do is like I hear him and Hide talking about the coffee or the espresso, and then I would just like kind of grab the cups and just sip in and like try to think and match to what they were saying, and then she's like, yeah.
You really are one of his professional children. You get that, right?
I was very lucky to be able to witness that process, right, of him going into Seattle, and definitely he was very disciplined with it. Again, it was very similar to Tonya. He was training very hard. He was training until very late. He was physically exhausted. So there was a lot of sacrifice behind it, but he put a lot of like focus, I guess, into that competition, and that helped him achieve what he achieved. And I think that also feed into the company, and him as a coach feeds that into the company, that if you focusing on comp, then you should focus. This is not about you having an expensive coffee or you having, access to fancy equipment to win. Like, you have to put 100% of your focus into it. So that helps as well.
I'm such a big fan and a massive advocate for people doing hard things. And because when moments like this come up unexpectedly, like this being what we're facing right now, dealing with it becomes second nature. You
Yeah.
know, it's you force yourself into the discomfort of hard things so that you can grow mind muscles and heart muscles that support you through life in different ways. And in all the Instagram lives and everything, I keep talking about this heart muscles thing, right? But the same thing when you force yourself into dedicating yourself to a task when you don't have to, like competition, like building a business, like moving countries, like doing all of this kind of stuff. When you force yourself into doing hard stuff when it's not absolutely required from you, you really are saying, I'm going to push myself into an ice bucket, right?
Yeah. And the ice bath is the short version of the bigger picture, right?
Right,
And
exactly.
that's why it works. Last year, 2019, yes, was my first year doing Brewers Cup, and at that time, and this happened at the same time that with Agnieszka, right? So it was 2018, kind of like leading into the
Doesn't that feel like it
2018
was
year.
10 years ago now?
Yeah, I know. I was very I was having a breakpoint moment with the coffee industry where I kept seeing unfairness everywhere, and I wasn't sure anymore if it was me, if I was going crazy, if it was the industry. I was very lost, and then I started doing some like coaching and like kind of like spiritual growth
Yep.
stuff, and that's when I start changing my mindset a lot. And Aga came right at the beginning of it, so that's why I think I was so optimistic, because I had all the energy and all the okay, cool, let's test if this works. And then I decided to do Brewers Cup because I really wanted a woman in coffee, especially in Australia, to give it a go.
Right.
And I was very frustrated of seeing that it's always, when you get to top 12, there's only one or two girls that made it. And there's all these theories about that happens. Some people say, well, women don't compete or women don't give it a go. Others might think maybe
the
they don't get
judging.
the same support. Maybe they're more fearful of it. So there was all these different theories, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do my best to get it done. And I'm gonna do Brewers Cup because I've done barista before, and I don't want any woman in coffee to say, oh well, you got it done because you've done it before.
Right.
So I needed to choose something that it was completely out of my depth, completely out of my. So I made the decision to win Brewers Cup in July 2018, and I learned how to brew in September.
Who taught you how to brew?
It was very funny. I would. So we have Sam Cora in the company.
Yep.
He placed number 2 in Budapest in 2017. So in my head, I had this idea that all right, there's no point on reinventing the wheel where there's a wheel that works very well.
Yes.
So I basically at that time I just mimic him. I mimic him so much that I brew with my left, even if I'm not a left-handed person.
Wow. He's left-handed, I'm assuming.
Yeah. And at that time I would film him, and then I would watch the videos, and I would just try to replicate as much as possible. It was very crazy. I have some posts on my Instagram. In one time I grabbed a AeroPress filter, and I drew a spiral in it, and all I kept doing is just practicing pouring in a spiral shape, over the line, because when I had a coffee in the cone, I couldn't see the my
spiral.
movements.
Yeah.
It was an absolute disaster. So I really, really had to learn the muscle memory from scratch. I had to learn even what brewing meant. I am good at cupping, so I knew what a good coffee would taste like, and I have judged Brewers Cup, but I didn't really know, what's under and over extraction, or what variables I need to move to get to certain results. So yeah, it was a very hard journey to start that from scratch, and then going into nationals, and trying to be the first female to win Brewers Cup in Australia as well. with zero background into Brewers, like absolutely nothing. Competing against legends, competing against people that has won nationals before. It was a very scary scenario, but I think that if you throw yourself into the unknown, and the unknown is so big and so scary, because for me at that time it was so scary, the fear of failure was so big, but at the same time there was this lack of fear because I've never done it before.
Yeah.
That helped me achieve that win, you know. And what I'm trying to say with this is like that situation helped me so much understand that sometimes the impossible is doable. Because seriously, like winning Brewers Cup in Australia that year was absolutely impossible. I wasn't the favorite. I wasn't the one with the best coffee. I always said this, like amazing barista brewer from Australia called David Train. He scored 100 points that year
Wow.
in open service. It never happened before. We had a judge from WCE in Australia at that time calling WCE, going like, "Is this even like legal?" Like, you know, it was absolutely insane that someone would score 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, and putting that into the scenario and saying like that's really impossible, right? Like, how do you beat 100 points?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, everything was really like getting to the super level of harshness, and if that was doable, when I see this scenario right now, when I see, all right, business is getting bad, and it's getting bad not only here, it's getting bad everywhere.
Everywhere.
There's a part of me that goes, all right, cool, challenge accepted, you know.
And that's
Let's
what comes
deal
from
with it.
doing hard stuff, right? It's this new comfort with the discomfort of hard. Because people, as somebody like Yanina, who is well acquainted with doing hard, it's the first time you do it, the second time you do it, it's just feels like shit. It's hard to the point of disgusting. You feel uncomfortable in ways that you never want to feel uncomfortable. But once you go through the process of learning what comes after you've dared to do hard things, it becomes addictive. Like you get excited about, ooh, what is this going to teach me about who I am? What heart muscles am I going to grow? What mind muscles am I going to grow? Where's the new freedom that I'm going to find? Like a friend and I were having a conversation about what I've learnt so far in this quarantine period. And I was telling him all these amazing things that I've learnt about myself and about people. And he's like, how do you do that? How do you like continue to learn stuff? And for me, it's about, well, you go in excited to learn from the hard. It has so much to offer you. Look, this moment in history, we're never going to get access to what it feels like to feel the pain that we're feeling right now ever again, because this is the first time we felt it. And if this happens again, we will have developed some coping mechanisms, right? So this terrifying time right now gives you like the closest proximity to these kinds of fears that exist inside you that you will ever have. Don't squander it. You'll never get access to this kind of you ever again.
Yep, correct.
And so like I look at this and I'm like, awesome. I could never have planned to make myself this uncomfortable. And I feel like this simulation that we're in, whatever it is, this game that we're living in right now is just this beautiful opportunity. It's just this beautiful opportunity to just like find like a secret tunnel within yourself that you never knew existed. Make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
But you can only have that frame of mind if doing hard stuff is something that you are open to, as opposed to people. For a lot of people, this is the first hard thing that they're doing, right? So, you know, I encourage people that if this is the first hard thing that's happening to you, and for a lot of people it is, try and find a way to get into flow with it and get comfortable with the discomfort that exists right now as quickly as possible. Because I promise you, like, you'll come out on the other end saying, that was fucking horrible, but I learned so much about myself and I'm so grateful to that, right?
Yeah. And looking for the meaning on things. Look, regardless of what your belief system is, you might believe that there's God, you might believe there's none of it, you might believe in the universe or not. But I always find that there's a level of practicality in belief that helps, right? Like when I was younger, I used to study the Mayan calendar. And I used to say, like, even if this is not true, it's great therapy, because it gives me something to work on every day. And right now, this opportunity to go within and to find meaning in what is happening, to find the challenge on what is happening, and to say, the Minister of Health said here, this is very likely to be the worst year on people's lives. And I love that message. For me,
you get excited about it, right?
Would this be the worst
Which
year
means
of my
next year
life?
is going to be, everything's up.
I'm okay with that. You know? I'm okay with that. Like I got lucky that I'm young still. I have a house. I'm relatively safe. Like so many things. Imagine if the worst year of my life dropped me in a complete different scenario, right? So when you have a little bit of like, try to bring yourself back into the meaning of it, even if you do have a belief system or not, I think that it's important that you try to find some kind of like structure for it. So at least you can start seeing the meaning of it. And it's not just this bioweapon is going to kill us all. And, they hate humanity. That's why they did it. And because you get in that spiral of like, it's a terrible spiral of negativity. And I'm not saying that is also within me. I remember when I was a teenager, I was very anarchist.
I imagine you would have been very punk rock.
I had my moments where I would hate businesses and I would hate society as a thing and banks and this whole system. But I remember I was like, well, I have two options. I can either remove myself from it entirely, or I can work with it. And I chose to work with it. That's why I chose coffee. That's why I chose to work with closer to producers, because for me that was like the best way to find balance between using business for good. So there's elements of this we can work with. And if you are too stressed, if this is way too much for you, then start thinking what you can do for others, because that usually gives you a little bit of like breathing space. If this feels too hard, then just start thinking, all right, cool, how can I help my community? If I'm gonna die anyway, I'm gonna get coronavirus and I'm gonna die from it. Fine. Let's embrace that idea then. Then what can I do with the time I have left? So if this is the end of the world, then great. And if this is not the end of the world, then also great. You know what I mean? It's like you can find meaning on both, and you can find a purpose on both. But staying petrified and super scared and feeding fear daily is definitely not going to help, regardless of which one of the outcomes.
I love that, because at the end of the day, there's so much there that's available for whichever way you decide to go. Like if you want to constantly be fed by fear, there's a lot of food out there that is going to feed you with fear. If you want that, there's a lot of that out there. And there's a lot of bullshit positivity that's out there. Don't worry, pray the virus away and everything's going to be fine and blah, blah, blah. The way to go about this is to ground yourself in facts. Like ground yourself in data and ground yourself in routine and ground yourself in, well, what can I control? Right now, I can control that I'm going to commit to meditating for 1 minute a day, and I'm going to commit to walking around the block once. once a day. If that's all you can commit to, that's structure. And I'm going to feed myself something that's not going to make me sicker. You know, like start with the tiny things. And a lot of the time, avoiding toxic things is an incredibly important part of structure. That is doing stuff, making sure that you're not around toxic people, making sure that you're not, like I'm getting so many people sending me conspiracy theory bullshit right now. Like I just simply have to not look at my Facebook Messenger right now. Just 2 days. I've decided like, no, not going to do that. And sure, I missed a bunch of messages from people who were trying to contact me regarding a bunch of stuff, but that's just what you have to do in order to keep your own version of what balance is right now.
And the funny thing is, like, the truth is not on your phone.
No,
you know?
the truth
It's
is
not.
within what your truth you decide it to be right now.
You can bring yourself to different states. Like if you start thinking right now about the pet you had when you were a kid and how it died, you're going to put yourself into a very sad mindset. If you start thinking about like that proud moment of your life, that moment where you feel fulfilled, whatever was that thing you achieved, you're going to bring yourself into a different vibration. So I think that the one thing you do have control of is what state you are on. And if you're stressed, I think it's very important to not ignore that. Because if you're stressed and you're like, all right, I'm going to take my mind off it. I'm just going to turn on the TV, or I'm going to watch a series, or I'm like, that's not good. If you're stressed, sit with it. Sit down and be like, all right, I'm going to allow myself to feel stress 100%. But nothing else, no other feeling, only stress. Nothing else allowed. And you sit down and you allow it to show. Everything, just get it all out, like a poison thing, just get it all out. I'm going to die. I think I'm going to get the virus. I think my loved ones are going to just get it all out and then go, okay, is it out? Go on to the next thing. You still feel stressed? Stay there. You can move on to the next thing. Go like, I always ask myself the question, what can I do right now that is going to make me happier? And sometimes it's very simple. Sometimes it's like, I want nice coffee. Okay, good, no worries. Go to the freezer. It's okay. You're allowed to go and have a nice coffee. Or I want, whatever that thing is. But step by step, little by little, because the part of you that is stressed right now, it's very likely to be your inner child. That's what it is. It's that part of you that doesn't comprehend the logic of the world. So that's why it's going like, oh my God, the unknown, the uncertain. That's why babies cry when their parents walk out of the room, because they just feel they're never going to come back. Is that like irrational fear? And it's very childish, that irrational fear. So bring yourself to it. Treat yourself like you will treat your loved ones. I think that's a very good way to love yourself. Sometimes we love ourselves with a lot of conditions, We said if we're feeling sick or if we're feeling tired, we're like, all right, cool, I'm going to go to bed early today, because tomorrow I need to wake up early. What is that? That's not nice. You wouldn't talk to like that to a partner or to your friend or your sister or your brother. Like if your sister is sick, for example, and you cook her like a very nice soup, right? You don't soup and go, okay, you eat this so you feel better, so you better feel a lot better. That's horrible. That's like, that's not unconditional love. So why do you do that to yourself? We do that to ourselves all the time. We put conditions. We're like, all right, I'm going to do this nice thing for you, but this must happen. Be nice.
But, yeah.
Just be nice to yourself. And if what you need is to stay at home, stay at home. If what you need is to have a nice, very nice coffee, just have it. If what you need is to call a friend and talk about something else, call them and tell them, can we talk about something else that is not the virus right now? Try to, that's how I took going to the supermarket. It scares me, but I think I'm in The Walking Dead, and I'm like, all right, this is my moment to believe this little movie thing. And then I turn it into fun. So then when I come back, I'm like thinking I'm coming back to the base, like it's just like my own imagination, but
it's a again, I go back to this thing of people who have done many hard things. It's about learning where your different thresholds are, right? You say something that's really important, this idea of not avoiding. Because I think that what we become very familiar with when we do hard things is the importance of authenticity, the importance of having the audacity to sit with our own pain, when everything about us is built to avoid sitting with fear and sitting with pain. And so when we've got the audacity to be like, actually, I'm going to ignore my natural tendency and I'm just going to sit with it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to avoid it. But then there's this other threshold of, for people like me, I tend towards, for most of my life, I was someone who suffered with depression, or I lived with depression and anxiety. And so for me, I know that I have a tendency that if I get too dark, I have to have mechanisms that remind me, hey, princess, like, you like this space too much. Let's remember that we need to keep it light sometimes. And so I have that other threshold of, no, this isn't healthy. Go watch a comedy movie right now, because this is still your reality, but you're creating this reality, and it doesn't have to be the way that you exist right now. You can just accept that right now you're listening to too much darkness, you're too much panic, too much of this shit. You need to just change the narrative, right?
Yeah. And embrace, of course, in the level that everybody can, right? But I have my own darkness, and sometimes I love arguing with it, and then it goes like, oh, well, then nothing is worth nothing. And I'm like, all right, well, then what are you going to do about it?
Yep.
Are you gonna jump out? What are you going to do? Tell me right now. Tell me what's the plan. And then it gets to a point that sometimes you corner it so badly that he runs out of answers. And he just gets very oh, well, no.
But that's the learning moment, right?
Or even if you get to, to that darkness and go well, if you're so negative and you think that everything is a disaster and humans are selfish and the world, wouldn't you want to live to watch that happen?
Yeah.
And then you feed it this kind of silly thought, just wouldn't you want to see it at least to be right? And then be like, oh, see, I told you I was right. And then he's like, all right, cool. Well, then keep going. Move on. But yeah, it's very important, I think, to, as much as you can, to allow to get those feelings. If you feel lonely, allow it. Allow it to come in. Don't just grab the phone and call someone straight away. Try to sense it for what it is as well, instead of just going, because the problem with that is every time we feel something that is not enjoyable, we remove it. And right now we are in a situation where we are facing a lot of things we don't like.
Right.
And if we continue to remove them, we're never gonna learn from them, and they're gonna keep appearing because they love to appear. Those feelings love to appear to teach us things. Actually, all feelings are teachers. As much as we like some teachers more than others, right? We all love joy. We all love freedom. We all love happiness, but nobody wants to sit with loneliness.
Yeah. No, well, there are some people who feel more comfortable in loneliness than they feel in anything, and that's when you end up depressed and things like that, right? But you sound like you've done Vipassana meditation. Have you?
I don't know what that kind of meditation is. No.
It's the 10-day silent retreats. Have you heard?
I've heard of them.
Yeah. And so a lot of what you're talking about is in alignment with this very Buddhist kind of meditation. There's a word that is at the center of Vipassana kind of meditation, and it's equanimity. Have you heard of that word?
No.
Equanimity is the idea that when you experience something, you experience it in its authenticity without influencing it. And so like you were saying, so if loneliness shows up, You allow the loneliness to show up, but you don't try and influence it in any way. So an example of that would be how you say to pick up the phone and call a friend because you're feeling lonely. You're trying to push the loneliness away, right? You're reacting to it. And so it's this idea that allow the loneliness to show up and allow it to remain for however long it needs to remain and naturally leave without experiencing anything that influences it. So don't talk to it. Don't feel sorry for it. Don't feel bad for yourself. It's not about that. It's just the importance of observing it. And so right now, okay, I feel happy that I'm speaking with you. It's about sitting in the happiness and not translating it into something other than what it is. And we all have Go ahead.
Sometimes it's funny because we don't even allow the happiness to sit in, right?
Exactly. Which is a way of influencing it.
Nice.
Yeah.
But
what happens if it goes away? Can I trust it? All of that talk starts to influence all of that, right? So equanimity is about, well, how can I have the stillness to allow myself to just be happy that I'm engaging in conversation with someone who is intelligent and considered and is a thinker and has done hard stuff. That to me feeds me, having this conversation. And how can I just show gratitude in that moment without making it into something more or less than what it is? I could turn around and turn that really dark and be like, well, so what's her motivation for being here? Or what is no one else? What if nobody else ever wants to come on this podcast? What if, what if nobody ever watches this episode? All of those kinds of things are ways that we can sabotage ourselves. But then on the other extreme of that is, well, I'm so she should be so lucky to be here and I should be so lucky that she's here. All of those things are ways to influence it from the other spectrum. Whereas if we just sit here in gratitude that our paths have crossed and this is happening.
And I think one thing I want to say there is it's very important to not confuse gratefulness with thankfulness. Thankfulness, when there's a part of people, because there's been a lot said, especially in social media, about you need to be grateful, things you're grateful for today, and people go, oh, my house, my family, my dog, but thankfulness is when you thank, when you are when you appreciate something, but sometimes it can have a emotional charge of owing. It's like,
right.
Oh, thank you, you shouldn't, oh my god, thank you. When gratefulness comes with the understanding that you deserve it. So, for example, I always put this example as the easiest one. When it's your birthday and someone comes to your house and brings you a present, you go, oh, thank you. But you don't go, oh, thank you. No, why you brought me a present, and you just push it back. You don't, because it's your birthday. It's logical. So you thank with gratefulness, but at the same time, you're not pushing it away because you deserve it. It's your birthday. That's why they're bringing you a present. So feeling the gratefulness is feeling the things we are grateful for, but also knowing that we deserve them. So it's not just like, oh my god, I can't believe I crossed paths with Lee. She's so amazing. What have I done, to be invited? Because that's the easy part. But the hard part is maybe there is a reason why I deserve it to be invited. And a lot of people has a problem with that. I have a problem with that feeling, because it's very hard. It's very easy to go, everybody is great and I'm terrible.
That's the easy part, right?
But knowing that you deserve something and being calm about it, being like, all right, then maybe I should feel happy that Lee invited me to her podcast. There might be a good reason for that, and I should be happy with myself. And that's the key part of gratefulness. So if anything I want to leave like with people is like, don't just feel like you have to like count the blessings, like, oh, my house, I have food, but actually feel the worthiness that you have for deserving those things, because that's what gratefulness really is. It's like knowing that you were worth of receiving this gift.
I actually don't think we could top that as a place to end the conversation. And it freezes right there. Are you still there, Yanina? Hello?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, excellent. I don't
Yes,
think that there's a place that would be better to end this conversation than on that incredibly powerful statement, because this is a time when we need to hear empowering words like that. And I am so grateful that our paths have crossed. But I have to tell you, we've spoken a couple times now. Every time I leave our conversations, I feel like my soul has been fed.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm incredibly grateful to engage with someone like you in our industry. I think our industry is better for having you in it and your intention. And I'm very grateful that you've graced this podcast with your wisdom. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
And we will be doing an Instagram live in a little bit, in like 15 minutes, if anyone would like to join us. And Yanina, where can people check you out?
On Instagram, Barista Yan. Yan is YAN for my name, Yanina. So, yep, that's where they can find me.
Perfect. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate having you on.
Thanks so much, Lee. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for the great job you're doing with the podcast and inviting all these people in, like sharing the knowledge and sharing messages. It's very positive for the coffee industry.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you very much. Peace, love, and peanut butter, everyone. Have an amazing rest of your day.